Salutations, respected viewers. I am George from Ireland. So this video is about how coronavirus is exploding in the United States, and Trump's mental state, how that's also exploding, how the two are connected, how it's been so badly mishandled. Now, I know despite what obviously Trump might think is he's not the absolute ruler of the United States, his power is quite restricted, so he's got a limited ability to screw things up, or indeed to salvage the situation. He could use the immense prestige that goes with the august office he holds to persuade people to do sensible things and to put themselves at less risk of contracting coronavirus. So it seems that what we may be seeing soon is natural deselection. So the feeble-minded disregarding medical advice and then congregating and obviously thereby exposing themselves to catching COVID-19 and passing on to others. So they'll be winnowed out. They should be awarded Darwin Awards for taking themselves out of evolution. So New York City and various parts of California are the most severely affected areas of the United States, partly because they're most internationally engaged, people flying abroad, or there's a large Chinese-American community in the Francisco Bay area. So I'm not blaming any nationality or any ethnicity, just that we do know it started in the People's Republic of China, and so more people in San Francisco have got familial links to Cathay, and therefore by more likely to unwittingly bring it back and so forth. To some extent, the same goes for New York City, and obviously the European countries most severely afflicted by Italy, France and Spain. Trump's policy was illogical about a month ago, banning flights from some of those European countries, but not the United Kingdom. Now, it's true the UK didn't have it as badly at the time, but it was not taking serious measures, whereas France, Spain and Italy, they took stern measures to try to limit the spread of it. It's just about worked. In Italy, seems to have peaked, stabilised. If we're lucky, it's the pinnacle. In Spain and France, it's going to start going down. But that's it. The thing is, there's always a time lag. It takes at least 2 weeks for an effect to be felt, because people can be asymptomatic for 2 weeks quite easily. Anyway, so although some of these major urban centres in the United States are most severely affected, it's going to spread everywhere, to the red states as well. I'm not suggesting that everyone will be just as badly affected. Somewhere like Alaska, where the population is very diffuse, is probably not going to get it too badly. But it's affecting Michigan quite badly already, but particularly Detroit. Now, the thing is, people who are illogical are more likely to get it. So disregarding expert advice, oh, science doesn't matter, I'll just do what I want, I'll just follow my prophet Trump. Despite there being no good reason to believe what he says on this issue, he constantly disregards expert advice himself. So you see how he's so prone to temper tantrums. And in adult life, this seems to hint at pathognomic psychopathy. You've seen how he's almost somnambulant when he's addressing these meetings. Some people have shown footage to suggest he takes these pills to energize him, which might explain why his mental state is highly volatile. Now, Fox hypothesized that China deliberately spread coronavirus, which has affected China more than anywhere else. Now it's beginning to affect the United States more than anywhere else. The United States had a long warning, had fair warning of like 4 months to try and reduce the spread of this, and Trump did precisely nothing, and is making it so much worse now by suggesting he wants to see churches packed at Easter. If I didn't know better, you'd think he wants people to die of it in huge numbers. Anyway, eugenically speaking, this may be welcome, as morons are going to die as a result. Okay, that's too harsh. You know, I feel sorry for the dim-witted people. Some of them are sweet. Just as clever people are sometimes woeful, sometimes detestable. But it may be a blessed stroke of providence that this is going to get rid of some Trump voters. So we may see eugenics at play, as I've said. There's this enriched idiocy that is the Trump administration, enriched in both sense, is that he's affluent and he just does everything to raise the quality of stupidity, to glamorize it, and to disseminate these false notions about coronavirus. First of all, that it was a hoax, that it didn't even exist, that they had it under control, that no need to worry because a vaccine was just around the corner. There's no guarantee a vaccine will ever be invented. It might be invented. I would really like to be invented right now. The sooner the better. But we can't bank on it being invented. And how effective is it? Even if we have one, it's not certain it will always work. So there are so many weapons grade wackos around him, so many sycophants. Oh yes, you're so right. What matters to him is really caressing his ego. He's only going to cooperate with governors to the extent that they suck up to him. His duty is to serve the public, not everyone else's to kowtow to him. Well, I'm just constantly gobsmacked by how low he can sink, by how utterly vile he is, and how much support he has from the public. So, as I was mentioning, presidential authority is obviously limited. There's a separation of powers. Much of that is laudable. I'm a minarchist. And the thing is, libertarianism never solves problems. When you have a drastic situation, you need to take swift and strong action. And the United States Constitution tries to prevent that. This can so often be abused by a despot to justify depriving people of their civil liberties, and these temporary measures of a nasty habit of becoming permanent. Under the Patriot Act, I'm not sure it's meant to be temporary, but anyway, it's still there. Some of the sort of 9/11 legislation, this warrantless wiretapping is still there, which you might have thought they might have got rid of as a threat subsided. I mean, how many foreign terrorists have killed people in the United States in the last 10 years? I don't know, but it's a minuscule amount. Very, very few, especially compared to gun crime, killing 33,000 per annum. So, anyway, you look at after 9/11, habeas corpus was suspended, and the United States was willing to do things many people thought unconscionable in order to deal with that crisis. So Boris Johnson's got coronavirus. I happened to bump into a Conservative MP in Chelsea a couple of days ago, someone I know from varsity days, and I mentioned this to him, and he said, "Oh, Bojo's tough, he'll be all right." Well, reassuring. That's Tory policy on how to deal with this. So, yeah, and the Red Knights, they're more likely to say that Jesus saves, and then pray about it. Well, you can utter your orisons at home. No reason to do them in a big congregation. As our Lord and Saviour himself said, when two or three are gathered in my name, I am present. Where in the Bible does it say that you have to meet in a big group in a building called a church? Nowhere. You've got a direct relationship with God if you believe in all that. Well, the story goes that the coronavirus broke out, and a very holy man, he prayed to the Almighty, spare me from coronavirus. He was warned to self-isolate, and the holy man said, I'm going to disregard these public warnings, I'm going to go out and mingle in a crowd. And he continued praying in the crowd to be spared from coronavirus. But he seemed to get symptoms. And then a doctor happened to see in the street, said, "Why don't you go to hospital right away and get treated?" And the man said, "No, I've prayed to the Lord. I know that God will save me. I'm not going to hospital." And so he went home, and he became very ill indeed. And in fact, an ambulance, a neighbor had called, came to him and said, "We can save you if you go to hospital now. Please, go to hospital." He said, No, I'm not worried this coronavirus that I know I've got. They tested him, he tested positive. I don't care. I know God is going to save me. The ambulance crew said, "Well, we're not going to treat you against your will." So they went away. The next day he died, and he arrives in heaven, and he says to God, "Lord, why didn't you save me when I prayed so piously for you to extend your arm and spare me from this malady?" And the Almighty says, "Well, I warned you twice and sent an ambulance. What more do you want?" So couldn't it be that God is acting through these public health warnings? So in Singapore, they thought they'd contained it. They eased off the restrictions. It's starting going up again. But there are textbook examples. Some countries have handled it quite smartly, and it's not too bad and only killed a handful of people. But I'm using gallows humor to get through this because, if we're all on the way to the grave, we might as well laugh till we go there. Black comedy isn't going to kill people. And all the grief in the world is not going to bring back a single person for one moment. So there'll be many plangent tales. The icy hand of death is going to reach out and unfeelingly tear away many a loved one from his or her grieving family. So there will be a moist literature in America written about how the heartless and feckless and utterly imbecilic Trump spread this pestilence through his country by telling people to do it precisely the wrong thing, by privileging the wealth of the super rich over the lives of millions. The United States has got 125,000 cases of this. Only about 2,000 people have died in the United States. In the context of a country of 330 million, that might seem a trifling number of people. But how near the end of this are we? I suspect we're only near the beginning. If the United States had taken firm measures a couple of months ago, a minimal number of people would have died. But no, it hasn't. But even if they had the most sensible president in the White House, there's a limit to what he can do. Obviously, it's up to the states a lot and what Congress is willing to authorize. State of emergency, I don't even know what that entitles him to do. But he's increasingly losing the plot, as everyone knows. Can't finish a sentence, rambling here and there. In a press conference about coronavirus, keeps banging on about ISIS, which is not germane to the topic at all, and spouting outright lies about having annihilated 100% of ISIS, which is not true at all. To the extent that it was extirpated, that was wrought by the Syrian military, the Russian Air Force, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, and so forth. So, staggeringly, the fake Tan Führer's approval ratings are up to about 45%. But in these times of crisis, people tend to rally to the commander-in-chief saying he needs our fulsome backing. And that they desperately want to believe that he can sort it out, so they place their faith in him. But the longer one of these crises goes on, the more and more it dips. Now they're 8 months to the election, so it'll go down and down unless there's some sort of dramatic improvement. I don't see that happening. Moreover, the stock market's taken a battering and the economy's already been hammered. This massive stimulus package has been signed by him. But wait a second, doesn't that show that government intervention in the economy is a good thing? Like Republicans have done so many times before. After that stock market crash in 1987, or indeed after 9/11, or in 2008, and saying, oh no, we can't do this or that, we can't have minimum wage, or government interference is always wrong, but they continually do it. A bit like, subventions to poor states, that's not bad. Republicans often want that's usually to red states. Farm subsidies, they don't think that's bad. Corporate welfare, they don't think that's bad. But somehow, if it's helping the needy, that's just outrageous and completely unacceptable. So there seems to be the perfect storm of a completely irrational, unhinged, and moronic president, and this pernicious Republican majority in the Senate, and this unpreparedness. The dearth of ventilators or of even tests and hazmat suits and on and on. Insurance companies obviously not going to cover it. The cost of these things being so sky high, many people just can't afford a test, can't afford the treatment, therefore can't afford not to work, going to work, catching it, spreading it around, and not tested. Now, doctors and nurses in the United States are very highly paid. I think I'm right in saying the highest paid in the world. Now, they do a vital job. They save lives every day. That's marvelous. They deserve to be handsomely rewarded. But the trouble is, if their salaries are too stratospherically high, that makes healthcare unaffordable for so many people. And they'll try and cure it themselves, ignore it, hope a condition goes away, and then the malady will no doubt aggravate by not being dealt with early on. As everybody will tell you, early intervention is the way to go. A stitch in time saves 9. And sometimes they can't save you because it's too late, like a cancer metastasizing or something, or even if they can save you, it'll be much costlier, take much longer time, and the side effects will be worse. So it's no more a bone of contention. Corona is there. Despite Trump saying that it wasn't there, remember, it's about to disappear. His notorious prediction that by the 12th of March, there would be close to zero. There were tens of thousands of cases like this. I mean, it just couldn't have been more wrong. Since he made that prediction, it's increased 9,000-fold since then. Wow, it's flabbergasting. And yet, so many people back him. 45% approval. Remember, 2 years ago, his approval was at 35%. So Trump himself has been a hindrance and not a help. He's got the best people, as he says. Well, so many of them have had to sack. They've resigned or they've ended up in jail. But in terms of scientific experts, chief medical officer, he really does have the best people. But then he just disregards unwelcome advice in an utterly childish and asinine manner. So he's burdening the U.S. administration with his rants, with his screeds, and then when a journalist asks a worthwhile question, so saying that's a nasty question, well, answer the question, never dealing with the substance of it. Oh, do I like it? Do I not? If it hurts my feelings, I won't engage with it. Wow, it's pathetic. And it's also sick-making. He should privilege his own touchiness over the well-being of the people he's supposed to be serving. And they're not supposed to be serving him. So his rationale for saying people should go back to work is the economy matters more than health. Now, lockdown. If it was going to save one person, would I have lockdown? No. If it's going to save 100 people, would I do it? No. If it was going to save 10,000 people, would I do it? Yes. I mean, out of a population the size of the US, yeah. Out of a smaller country, maybe even less so. It would require fewer people to be saved.